I grew up in the Four Corners region, the place where Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico meet at a single point on a map. The place where the land is red and vast and old in a way that does not feel geological so much as it feels intentional, as if the terrain itself has been waiting for something for longer than human memory can reach. My grandmother was Navajo. She did not talk about skinwalkers, not ever. Not when we asked, because children are drawn to the most frightening things available to them, and in the Four Corners, the most frightening thing available was always the thing that moved at the edge of the firelight and wore a shape that was not its own. She would change the subject. She would find something else for us to do. And on the one occasion when my cousin pressed her directly, asked her outright, with the specific fearlessness of a 12-year-old who has not yet learned what there is to be afraid of, she looked at him for a long moment with an expression I had never seen on her face before and said, "You do not talk about them. You do not say the word. And you do not look back when you hear your name called from somewhere you cannot see." I was 26, the first time I heard my name called from somewhere I could not see. I was driving home from my grandmother's house, a route I had driven hundreds of times, 40 miles of two-lane highway through high desert minimal traffic after 9 p.m., the kind of road where you can drive for 20 minutes without seeing another pair of headlights. It was late October. The temperature had dropped after sundown to somewhere in the low 30s, and the desert at that temperature in that month has a quality that I have tried many times to describe and cannot. Not cold exactly, not quiet exactly, but a combination of the two that feels less like weather and more like attention, like the land is aware of you. I had the windows up and the heat on, and the radio playing something I don't remember. I was approximately 16 miles from home, in a stretch of highway that ran between two low mesas with a dry wash crossing under the road in a culvert, when I saw something at the edge of my headlights. On the shoulder of the road, standing still. I slowed. My first thought was livestock. Cattle wandered onto the highway regularly in that area, and a collision with a cow at highway speed is not survivable for the cow and is sometimes not survivable for the driver. But as I slowed and my headlights fully resolved the shape, I understood that it was not livestock. It was tall, taller than a person should be in the specific way that I mean. Not unusually tall in the range of human height, but tall in a proportion that was wrong. The limbs too long relative to the torso, the head positioned at a height that did not correspond to the body beneath it. It was standing at the shoulder of the road facing my vehicle, and it was wearing, and this is the word I keep returning to, wearing because the alternative is something I am not prepared to commit to, the skin of an animal over its upper body. The fur visible in my headlights. Dark, coarse fur. The head of the animal, or what had been the head of the animal, positioned over the figure's own head. I did not stop. I slowed to perhaps 15 miles per hour as I passed it, and I looked at it through my driver's window as I went by, which I understand was the wrong thing to do and which I could not have stopped myself from doing. It turned as I passed. It tracked me with whatever was underneath the animal's head covering. And then as I accelerated away, I heard, through the closed window, through the sound of the engine and the heat and the radio, my name. My full name, first and last, in a voice that I can only describe as almost right, not wrong in a dramatic way, wrong in the subtle way that something is wrong when it has been assembled from components rather than grown, a voice that knew the sounds of my name without knowing the person the name belonged to, a voice that produced the syllables accurately while missing something essential about what the syllables meant. I drove the remaining 16 miles without stopping, without looking in the rearview mirror more than I could help, without turning the radio off because I needed the sound between me and the silence outside the car. I called my grandmother the next morning. I did not tell her what I had seen. I asked her instead whether she had ever heard of something on the road between her house and mine, whether anyone else had reported anything in that area. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You didn't stop." It was not a question. I said no, I hadn't stopped. She said, "Good. Don't go that way after dark for a while, take the long route." I asked her how long a while was. She said she would let me know. 3 weeks later, she called and told me the route was fine now. She did not explain what had changed. Or how she knew. I did not ask. I have taken the long route after dark on that highway ever since, regardless of what she said, because there are some things that you cannot unknow once you have experienced them. And one of those things is the sound of your own name in a voice that has learned the sounds without understanding what they mean. I have heard my name in that voice once more since then, not on the road. In my own house at 3 a.m. from somewhere outside my bedroom window. I did not look. I stayed in bed with my eyes open, and I did not look, and eventually it stopped, and I do not know what would have happened if I had looked, and I intend to keep not knowing. My grandmother died 2 years ago. I have no one left to call when it happens again. I believe it will happen again. I want to tell you about the summer I spent working on a cattle ranch in San Juan County, New Mexico, because what happened there in August of that year changed something in me that has not changed back. And I have been carrying it alone long enough that I need to put it somewhere outside of myself. The ranch was in the kind of country that looks simple from a distance and reveals its complexity only when you are inside it. Red rock formations, piñon and juniper on the higher ground, the specific dry heat of the high desert that is different from the wet heat of lower elevations, and that does something to your perception over time. A gradual sharpening of some senses and a dulling of others that makes the whole experience of being there feel slightly altered. I had grown up in the Southwest, but had not spent extended time at that elevation in that kind of isolation, and the adjustment took several weeks. The other hands were local, most of them Navajo or from families with long roots in the region. They were not unfriendly, but they had the particular reserve of people who have been working in a place long enough that they do not need to explain it to newcomers, and who have learned through experience which newcomers need explanations, and which ones will figure it out themselves, and which ones will leave before it matters either way. I was the only non-local. I was aware of this in the way you are aware of being a newcomer in a place with a long memory. The cattle began to disappear in late July. Not dying, disappearing. No carcasses, no blood, no evidence of predator activity that the experienced hands could identify as consistent with any predator native to the area. Just cattle that were present at dusk and absent at dawn, with no trace of how they had gone or where. This happened 3 times over 2 weeks. Each time the count was off by 1 or 2 animals. Each time no one could explain it. The ranch foreman, a Navajo man in his 60s named Harry who had worked that land for 30 years, was not visibly alarmed by the disappearances, which I found more unsettling than alarm would have been. He was quiet about it. He made adjustments to where the cattle were kept at night. He stopped sending hands out alone after dark. I asked one of the other workers, a younger man named Deshawn who had grown up on the reservation, and I had observed, a specific kind of alertness that the other hands lacked, a quality of attention to the edges of things, whether the disappearances had happened before. He said, different things have happened before. I asked what he meant. He looked at me for a moment, the way people look at you when they are deciding whether you are worth the time the explanation will take. Then he said, "You know what this country is. You know what's been here a long time." I said I had heard things. He said, hearing things is different from knowing things. What I know is that there are things out here that don't want to be seen. And when cattle start disappearing without a trace, it means something that doesn't want to be seen has started being comfortable, has started acting like it belongs. He went back to work. I went back to work. I did not ask again. 3 nights later, I was on a late check of the south pasture, a task that had been added to the rotation after the disappearances began, a simple walk of the fence line to confirm the cattle were in position. Harry had asked me specifically to do it, which I had registered as trust and later understood as something more complicated than trust. The south pasture backed up against a stretch of broken rock and juniper that rose toward a low mesa approximately half a mile from the fence line. At night, in moonlight, the juniper cast specific shadows, and the rock formations held a quality of light that was different from the open pasture, darker in some ways, brighter in others, the kind of visual complexity that the eye interprets as movement even when there is none. I was at the far corner of the fence line, approximately a quarter mile from the gate, when the dog stopped. I had a ranch dog with me, a blue heeler named Colt who had been working cattle for years and who had, I had observed, better instincts than most of the hands. He stopped in the middle of the fence line and pointed, not the trained point of a bird dog, but the instinctive arrest of an animal that has detected something that its training has no response to. Every muscle locked. His head was oriented toward the juniper and rock to the south. He did not bark. Dogs bark at things they want to drive away. He made no sound at all. I looked toward the juniper. The shape was at the edge of the tree line, approximately 200 yards away. Upright. moving toward the fence line with a gait that I registered immediately as wrong, not the wrong of injury or illness, but the wrong of something that had learned locomotion secondhand, that was producing the me. Channocks of bipedal movement without the intuitive understanding of balance and momentum that produces human gait naturally. It moved in the way that someone moves who has studied walking without ever having done it. And it was too fast. At the pace it was moving, it would reach the fence line in less than 2 minutes. I did not call out. I did not use my flashlight. I took Colt by the collar. He came without resistance, which is the detail that stays with me most, because Colt was not a dog that yielded to a hand on his collar without resistance, and I walked back to the gate as quickly as I could without running. I did not run because I had been told by Deshawn and by Harry in a separate context that you did not run. You did not show fear, and you did not run, and you did not look directly at it. I walked to the gate. I went through it. I latched it behind me, and I walked back to the bunkhouse. In the morning, I told Harry what I had seen. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "How close did it get to the fence?" I said I didn't know. I left before it reached it. He nodded. He said, "You did right." I asked him what it was. He looked at me with the expression I had come to associate with questions that had answers he was not going to give me. He said, "It's something that's been around here a long time, something that's deciding whether it's interested in us. The cattle were a test." He paused. "You walking away without running, that's the right answer to give it." I asked what the wrong answer was. He said, "Showing it you're afraid, or showing it you're curious. Either one is an invitation." No more cattle disappeared after that night. I do not know whether this was because of anything I did or did not do, or because the thing in the juniper had made whatever decision it was in the process of making and moved on to something else. I finished the summer and I left, and I have not been back to that county. But I think about Colt sometimes, about the way he came when I took his collar, about the fact that a cattle dog with years of working experience made no sound at something 200 yards away in the dark. Dogs bark at things they want to drive away. He made no sound at all. My husband and I do not talk about what happened on the drive back from Monument Valley. Not to each other, not to anyone else. We had an implicit agreement from approximately 48 hours after we returned home, an agreement that was never discussed, that simply solidified out of the mutual understanding that talking about it would require us to decide what we believed, and deciding what we believed would require us to live with that decision. I am telling you because the agreement was with my husband, not with you, and because it has been 6 years and the weight of it has not decreased. We were driving back from a trip to the Utah-Arizona border region in late September. The drive from Monument Valley back toward Albuquerque is approximately 4 hours of highway through high desert, the kind of drive that is beautiful in daylight and becomes something else after dark, when the landscape outside the windows disappears and is replaced by the specific absence of light that only exists in places with no ambient illumination for many miles in any direction. We left Monument Valley later than planned. By the time we reached the open highway north of Kayenta, it was fully dark, maybe 9 p.m., and my husband was driving while I was in the passenger seat with a book I was not reading, watching the darkness out the window. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Organic, animal. The specific smell of something large that had been dead for a period of time, not fresh death, but the later stage, the smell that carries and penetrates. I mentioned it to my husband. He said he smelled it too and assumed we had passed something dead on the roadside, which was common on that highway where wildlife crossing was frequent and collisions were regular. The smell did not pass. It stayed. Over the next several minutes as we continued down the highway, the smell remained at the same intensity. This was unusual. Roadside carrion smell diminishes quickly as you move past the source. This smell was staying with us. My husband noticed it too. He said, "That's not going away." I looked out the passenger window into the dark. The highway was empty in both directions. The land on either side was flat and featureless in darkness. And then something paced us. That is the only word for what it was doing. It was running alongside the vehicle outside my passenger window, in the dark just beyond the reach of the side-mounted running lights at highway speed. Whatever it was matching our speed. We were doing approximately 70 miles per hour. I saw it in the way you see something when your eyes have adjusted to a particular quality of darkness, and you are looking at the right depth and angle, not clearly, not with detail, but with the certainty of presence. A shape, moving, keeping pace with the vehicle with the specific, effortless quality of something that is not running at its limit. I said, "There's something outside." My husband said, "What?" I said, "Outside my window. Something is running alongside us." He looked in the side mirror. He looked for a long time. Then he said very quietly, "Don't look directly at it." I asked how he could see it in the mirror if I couldn't see it clearly out the window. He said, "Just don't look directly at it. Look somewhere else." I looked at the dashboard. I looked at the road ahead. I did not look out the passenger window. In my peripheral vision, the shape was still there, still pacing. My husband accelerated, 80, 85, 90 miles per hour on an empty highway in the dark in the high desert. The shape kept pace. I could hear it now. Over the engine and the road noise and the sound of the air around the car at 90 miles per hour, I could hear something outside that was not the engine and was not the road and was not the air. A sound that I will not try to describe because any description I can produce will be inadequate and may be inaccurate and may in some way I do not understand be unsafe. My husband said very quietly, "Pray." I am not a particularly religious person. My husband is less religious than I am. He has never, in the 12 years I have known him, told me to pray. I heard in his voice something that I had not heard there before and have not heard since, not fear exactly, but the specific quality of someone who has run out of other options. I prayed, not with words, with everything I had left that wasn't fear. At approximately 93 miles per hour on the highway north of Kienta, the shape was no longer there. Not gone gradually, gone. One moment in my peripheral vision it was there, keeping pace, and then it was not there. The smell left at the same moment. The sound left at the same moment. My husband slowed the car. We drove the remaining 3 hours to Albuquerque in near silence. We stopped once for gas and did not speak at the gas station. We went home. We went to bed. In the morning we had coffee and we looked at each other, and I could see in his face the same thing he could probably see in mine. The decision about what to do with the previous night, about where to put it, about how to continue with a life that now contained this in addition to everything else it contained. We did not talk about it. We have not talked about it in 6 years. There are 2 things I want to tell you, and then I am finished. The first, for approximately 3 weeks after we returned home, our dog would not enter the bedroom that had been our room when the thing was outside the car. Our dog, who had slept in that room for 6 years, who had a dog bed in the corner of that room, who went to that room voluntarily every night when we went to bed. For 3 weeks, he would not cross the threshold. He would stand in the doorway and look into the room and look at us and then turn around and sleep in the hallway. After 3 weeks, he went back in. We do not know what changed. The second, I have read extensively in the years since about what the Navajo understand regarding the entity commonly called a skinwalker, about what it is, about what it does, about what it wants from the encounters it initiates. And I have read that there are things you are not supposed to do during an encounter, things that extend an invitation, that signals something that the entity will interpret as permission. One of those things is making sustained eye contact. My husband told me not to look directly at it. He knew this without being told. He knew it in the moment in the dark at 90 miles per hour, and he told me and I listened. I do not know how he knew. I have not asked. There are some things that remaining in a marriage requires you not to examine too closely. I am not sure that is one of them, but I have not asked.